is of saying, here we are, community, we're racing,
Right.
and we want to enter our first race. And we do have a race on May 10th,
Okay.
the Heritage Center's 5K.
Okay.
And like I said, we're purchasing our first chair next week.
Okay.
And so we're really at the very early stages of kind of presenting ourselves to the community.
Okay.
And letting people know who we are and how they can donate. And people can certainly donate to Donnie
Okay.
with the name Racin' in the memo line.
Okay.
And that money will be going directly to Racin' to fund chairs, and not just chairs, but to also help with registration fees
Okay.
for the person in the chair, as well as any other fees that we might need to take on, such
Okay.
as if other people want to race but don't have the funds.
Right.
We will try to support them with registration fees,
Okay.
if we can do that.
Yeah.
So really, still the early stages, but there really is a lot of energy and excitement around racing. People are talking about it much more. The people that I see on a regular basis say, "Hey, I know you're affiliated with racing. Tell me what that is." So yeah, I think we're finally arriving on the scene.
Okay.
And that's very exciting.
Yeah, I'd love to see one of those races just to check it out.
Just to be there, yeah.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah.
I'm really excited about just being a part of that first race and experiencing the excitement and joy that I
Yeah.
think we'll all have, just being doing what we really know we're here to do, which
Right.
is to include everybody, make sure everybody has a great experience. And when I've been at these races myself, I feel like it's some of the best times I've had in Buffalo. So everybody should have access to that,
Yeah.
and we need to make sure that that's what happens.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. I know we've gone over this kind of, but I just want to ask it straight out. What are the positives about being a part of this?
Well, I think what first hits me is the socialization piece. Being out there and involved with others, people that you wouldn't necessarily have had a chance to meet, who will be a part of your team, because there are a lot of people, a lot of racers out there, men and women who are a part of checkers and other race groups, who have expressed interest in being a part of Racin',
Right.
our organization. So if you're a person with a developmental disability, it's such a nice way, Racin' is a nice way to build a bridge between you and other people in the community who are focused on fitness,
Right.
and community activities, and on supporting people with developmental disabilities. So one, it's a nice way to meet new people, and that's important. In terms of the stimulation that one receives during these events, I
Yes.
mean, the endorphin boost that you get from...
It's a rush.
It's a real rush. And so folks with developmental disabilities, if it's hard for them, in terms of mobility to get that rush, because perhaps they're not able to run,
Right.
or walk,
Right.
to be able to get that endorphin rush from being pushed and being a part of a race with all these other runners. That kind of thrill, I think, is something special. Also being a part of a team.
Right.
Like having a team around you and really feeling like this is a challenge you're taking on. How quickly can you get from start to finish in your chair with your team around you? So you're a part of a team taking
Okay.
on a challenge. That's
All right.
that's a wonderful experience to have. And being a part of the community,
Yeah.
really being a part of society and having that level of inclusion.
Yeah.
I think it's very special.
It seems different, like from being in Special Olympics, because when you're in Special Olympics, it's you're doing it yourself. You're not really on a team. Same thing with like the Paralympics. It seems like as well.
Yeah.
So it sounds more. I don't know how to put it, but it just sounds different. Like it'd be something really interesting to get into.
Yeah, we haven't had our first race yet, but I'm
Right.
really interested in talking to the individual, in the chair, to see what their experience was like, to see if they truly felt a part of the team,
Right.
Trying to quickly get to the finish,
Yeah.
and feeling that level of camaraderie. And I'm thinking that the level of being a part of that team, we could be fostering relationships that go well beyond just that race.
Exactly.
Because that's an exciting experience for everyone.
It is.
And I would think that the push team, the folks who are involved in pushing, that's a nice connection that's established between
Yeah.
you and the person with the developmental disability,
Yes.
and that could last well beyond the race.
Right.
So I think we're talking about not just a team for that race, but possibly positive supports that could last well beyond the race.
Okay. When are these meetings?
The meetings that we have are once a month,
Okay.
and these are board meetings that we have with, like I said, we typically have around 8 people. We have around, I think, 13 people on our board, and we meet once a month to discuss, whatever we need to discuss to make sure we're moving racing forward. And like I said before, our number one goal now is to get these chairs and to raise money for these chairs.
Right.
And eventually what we'd like to do is create a club. Because we are a rolling athletic club, and so over time, as we find out who's interested in being a part of racing, we'd like to look beyond just the races themselves and maybe see if we can start getting together outside of races to just be together and to work on fitness together.
Okay.
And that's something down the road that we do want to establish. I think we felt it was first easier to focus on the races that are already established,
Right.
and purchasing some chairs, seeing who's interested, and then out of that, look at maybe establishing a club.
Okay. Now, earlier you said you were a psychologist.
I am.
How do you think doing the race helps with depression and loneliness for people with developmental disabilities?
Well, I think what we had talked about before, I think, if someone is depressed and they see a psychologist, oftentimes the psychologist is saying, I know you don't feel like you have a lot of energy. You need to force yourself to get outside and start connecting with people. You literally have to force yourself to do it, even though you don't want to do it, and you feel like you may feel like isolating.
Yeah.
So for someone with depression, who may have a developmental disability, forcing themselves to use whatever resources they have to make that effort to get into our organization in any way, so they can begin to socialize and develop connections with people. And those connections can often distract them from some of the things that may be depressing them. So certainly getting involved can be a real distraction.
Right.
Like we said before, the support you can get from people is critical. Some people who are depressed are often in their own heads
Support.
and thinking about having negative thoughts about themselves or about life.
Right.
But once you're connecting with others and connecting around something important and meaningful, that can really help alleviate depression. The endorphin boost we were talking about
Right.
is something that can certainly help. You're getting a lot of these positive brain chemicals
Yes.
going, and that can certainly alleviate depression. Being connected to the larger community, again, like we had said before, these are all incredibly powerful ways to combat depression.
Right.
And if you read the research, a lot of the research says that some of these things we're talking about are just as effective as antidepressant medication.
Right.
And so racing, I actually think, is the perfect venue, the perfect place for someone who's struggling with depression to begin to take real positive steps for themselves in terms of their own mental health.
Okay. Because I've growing up, I've talked with my friends and stuff like that, coworkers, and we've all talked about at one point being a little depressed or being a little bit lonely because we felt like we were not being included and stuff like that. So I can see where what you're saying. So then the last question is, and then we could just talk from here because I don't believe we're done yet. We have some time, is what I'm saying. About the contact info, you said that you wanted to mention Frank, I believe.
Yep. So I think we have Frank's email address, and so either contacting Frank Camerata, that's the Erie County Department for the Disabled.
Okay.
And so Frank is the lead there at the Erie County Department for the Disabled, and so his email address is frank.camerata@erie.gov, and again that information should be on the screen.
Right.
As well as Luther Vusic, and Luther's phone number should be on the screen. And Luther's been the leader of our meetings and been a huge help to us. So he's been a blessing to our organization, as has Frank.
Yep.
It's interesting. I first had the frustration as I talked to you early about the corporate challenge.
Yes.
And not being able to get our colleagues into that. And once I talked to BJ and we started these meetings, Frank has been there, I'm pretty sure every meeting. always makes sure to get there
Yeah.
and supports this in a big way. And Luther as well. Luther, we quickly saw that Luther's a real leader and that we wanted him leading our meetings. So yeah, we have a really powerful group. We have some folks on that committee who are runners. We have folks on that committee who have other skills as well, skills to help us with website development.
Okay.
And we're going to be on the Donnie website. That's something I want to make sure people know.
Okay.
Is that we're going to have, I believe it's a page,
Okay.
a link at least, but I believe it's a page on the Donnie website for people to learn more about racing.
Okay.
And eventually we'll have our survey on that page as well.
Awesome.
But yeah, so Frank and Luther are the two people to connect with, and again, surveys will be going out within the next month.
Now they're going to just going out to everybody, or how's that going to?
Yeah, it's a good question. The goal is to reach anybody and everybody who has a developmental disability, and that's going to be a little tricky because there are some folks who may not be directly affiliated
Right.
with an agency or with the state.
Right.
So we're going to have to really do a lot of work to make sure that we're getting these in the hands of everyone.
Okay.
The goal is to make this, to open this up as big as it can be, and then we'll deal with that problem. If that becomes an issue, that would be a great issue
Okay.
to have to address, and we'll figure it out from there.
Okay. We have about 2 minutes left, and I'm just wondering if there's anything you want to add to what you've been saying, what you would like to tell people out there, our viewers.
Well, I think people know the essence of what racing's all about. Gwen, when you were talking about your experience, you briefly just mentioned what it was like to have a developmental disability, and maybe somewhat be a little depressed at times. And working with folks with developmental disabilities, I certainly see that, and I see people who have a lot of potential and who have a lot of leadership skills. And so I would hope that as people get involved with racing, that people with developmental disabilities see that this isn't just something for them in terms of giving them something.
Right.
This is an opportunity for them to really give back to the
Right.
community. Because when they enter races, we can raise money not only for chairs for us, but we can also help raise money for these organizations that are running these races and organizing these races. And we've also talked about a goal of trying to find a way to give some of our money back to local charities.
Okay.
And so it's really a nice opportunity for people with developmental disabilities to give back to the community as well.
Okay. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks for
and I
having
want
me.
to thank the viewers for joining us today as well. And join us again on Self-Advocacy in Action.
Fuck.